Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, International Monetary Fund set to pass Ghana after second program review as the team ends two-week engagement today. This afternoon, we shall be analyzing the chances of Ghana in passing the review. Also in this bulletin, Fitch Solutions predicts 3.5% growth rate for Ghana's economy in 2024, saying the economy is beginning to show signs of recovery.
We forecast that the economy will expand by 3.5%, so still below the country's pre-pandemic trajectory, but markedly better compared to last year.
And later on Showbiz, we analyze potential of the tourism sector and how feasible the $4 billion target for 2025 will be. These and many others we've lined up for you. Please stay. Thanks so much for your company. I am Pius Kojo Baka. We can now take a look at our stories. And the International Monetary Fund staff is set to pass Ghana on the second program review. This may happen after the visiting team completes this two-week engagement in the country today. George Yaafo has the rest of the story.
Joy Business understands that the IMF team is expected to announce that Ghana has broadly completed the second review under the fund program. This was after it assessed the country based on those fiscal and monetary data up to the end of December 2023. We understand that the fund is likely to indicate that the program is broadly on track, with some saying that Ghana may have secured a pass mark of 92%. Joy Business understands that there should be that final round of meeting with government officials this morning. However, we are not sure whether that could change the wording or the fund's statement on Ghana. But coming out of this engagement, the fund's major concern may be the forward-looking data about the economy. That is, will government be able to raise the needed revenue to support the economy going forward, suspending some taxes in the 2024 budget? And what about containing expenditure, especially in an election year? The IMF staff is expected to submit their report to the IMF board for approval in June this year, and that could lead to the release of some $360 million to Ghana.
And we've got to have a discussion on the back of this. Joining me in studio is my colleague George Yaafo, who has been following development on that story for us. George, thanks so much for joining me in studio. First off, give us a breakdown or a background as to why the mission is in town.
So under this whole IMF program, we're supposed to go in maybe steps, one would say. After every assessment, a disbursement is made. We've done the first one already, that saw the release of those funds. Now, the IMF is saying that they don't have to say that they are headquarters in making judgment, because when they get into that country, it's not just about engaging government. They need to engage civil society groups and other interest groups as well. And they also need to get an on-ground experience. Government has said, okay, you're going to raise X amount of revenue. What are the challenges? And that is why they always come into town to do their own assessment of the situation on the ground. And then after that, they put together their report. Then they go to their board to make some extra justification, and then based on the justification, the board could approve or disapprove of their report, and depending on the verdict of the board, we may get that additional tranche of funds or it will not come.
And we know they've been in the country for the past 2 weeks now. Yeah. What more are we learning? What are some of the...
So they've done the necessary engagement with other interest groups as well, the Ghana Gas, trying to get an understanding of our energy situation as well, because it appears that it's also a big issue for them. So another issue that has come up is that they have given their blessings to plans to recapitalize the NIB, so that will also maybe be captured in this statement that they'll release. What we'll get is that, yes, of course, Ghana's program could be said to be on track. So they've engaged all those other interest groups, and it appears that they are okay. As highlighted earlier, the big concern has been with going forward, being an election year, also being the fact that we've been able to suspend some taxes in the budget. How are we going to improve the situation going forward when it comes to raising the required revenue to support the economy? So it appears that the engagement that they've done with all the other interest groups, it appears that the program is on track. It looks like maybe late today or even tomorrow, there might be some engagement or a press release issued with respect to what is their assessment after their engagement and what they're going to take to their board. And depending on what they capture in that report, as I said earlier, the board could approve the disbursement for us about $360 million for the country, and that should be disbursed somewhere in June. But looking at what we are picking up, there isn't any indication that they would not pass Ghana when it comes to the second review. It appears that maybe the bigger concern will come during the third review that will come later this year.
And George, pretty soon we'll engage Professor L Menon on some impact this is going to have on the economy. But what next for the team?
What next for the team is that they're going to put together what they call the staff report, go back and do the editing and all those things, put together this report, do a presentation to the IMF board. And then if they're able to convince the board that Ghana has been able to meet all those quantitative and qualitative targets under the second review, then the board will approve the $630 million to be disbursed. As soon as the board meets in June, maybe give it 2 days maximum, that transfer will come to the Bank of Ghana's account. And unlike the previous programs, this is going to support projects identified in the 2024 budget.
Thank you very much, George Yaafo, for that quick update on that. Let's get on to Zoom and engage Professor L Menon, an economist, to help us understand what this would mean to the economy going forward. Thanks so much, sir, for agreeing to speak to us here on the marketplace. You've heard a detailed report by my colleague, George Yaafo. It appears we are good to go.
Yes, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. If you can hear me loud and clear.
I can.
Okay, so I'm not surprised that IMF will pass us this time around as well. Because if you look at all the indicators that were marked up for this assessment, we are almost through it. And I can tell you that if you look at our revenue generation, we are doing well. The only thing is that, I mean, looking at some taxes that has been scrapped, which was highlighted in the report that is likely to come out, I can tell you that, yes, of course, we are doing well in terms of revenue generation. But then looking at election year, but let's look at the entire IMF program into perspective. I mean, if you put the entire IMF program into perspective, IMF is there to give us that kind of credibility. Forget about the releases of funds that comes with, you know, their regular assessment of the economy. But then their target is that the Ghanaian economy must be positioned to be attractive once again. And that is how I see it. And so the various assessment will come with different hitches here and there. But I can tell you that in the end, Ghana will go through. But you see, let's look at a typical election year. And I'm not surprised that is what, you know, we are pushing across. A typical Ghanaian election year comes with a lot of, I mean, economic mismanagement discrepancies that you can talk about. When you talk about the tax, you know, removal and all those, they are all part of election year mismanagement that we have started witnessing. And as a result of that, if they should flag out, you know, election year overspending, then obviously I'm not surprised with that. But looking at the program holistically, this assessment, I'm not surprised that we have gone through.
Let's, as we await the official communication from the IMF and, of course, government on the progress made so far, ultimately, this would certainly have an impact on the economy. Let's talk about the signal this would send to our investors.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in terms of signal, I would say, yes, it's a good one because, like I said earlier, forget about the quantums of monies that they are releasing into the economy. And I know very well that those monies will not do anything as far as the Ghanaian economy is concerned. But then the credibility in terms of control, in terms of making sure that we do the right thing, that is what the investor is going to look at. Apart from that, there's nothing else that the IMF program gives us. We know very well that if you trace back our history of economic indicators, anytime we are with the IMF, you will see some kind of, conservation in terms of our exchange rate, in terms of our inflation control, in terms of our, all other indicators, budget deficit to be specific. And that's what controls the borrowing and other things. And if you run across over the years, you will come to understand that, yes, historically, a typical Ghanaian economy, anytime they are with the IMF, we see all these indicators being tamed, other than not being with the IMF. So the investor is going to look at all this, and that is what is going to help, boost the economy again, winning the heart of the investor community.
Despite news coming in that we are likely to pass the review, of course, there were some issues that came during this discussion. We are learning that they've raised issues about revenue and what have you. Indeed, there is what more we can do as a country to, improve our revenue situation, of course, expenditure and what have you within an election year, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, revenue comes through taxes. And I think the program must understand that as a country, we find ourselves in what we call tax fatigue, to a point where, the taxes have started, squeezing businesses here and there. And so if we've gotten to that threshold, I think the program, the IMF itself must understand that is a country, that thrives on, taxes to build up, its revenue. So if the taxes have gotten to a point where the citizens are complaining, I think they should be able to, listen to it and then possibly soften their stance in terms of the revenue. I don't know, how the way we package ourselves to the program, I think it's like almost every year we want to increase our revenue by 1 billion, Ghana cedis. And I'm asking myself, what have we done so special in this economy to be increasing revenue? Have we widened the tax net? Have we done some investment that will increase, economic agent income? If I say economic agent income, I mean businesses and individuals. For us to be talking about increasing taxes, tax revenue by 1 billion every year. I don't think we have done anything special, in relation to that. So it's the way we package ourselves. But I would advise that IMF does not go through strictly by what we have, packaged to them in winning their hearts for the program. But I can say that, yes, indeed, we have gotten to a point where there seems to be a tax fatigue, which, they must listen to the citizens in the country. They did their own consultations when they come into the country. I'm not sure they will consult only the, the politicians and the policy makers, but they contacted, civil society organizations and all those. And I know very well that it will be, put before them that, look, we are at the point of, tax fatigue, which may cramp out, businesses here and there.
Meantime, Fitch Solutions is predicting that we are likely to see economic growth rate by some 3.5%, contrary to the 2.9% forecasted by World Bank. Does it come to you as a surprise?
No, I'm not surprised because economic growth rate, government spending is part of it. And we are in the election year. We know that, government spending goes up in the election year. If you look at a component of, GDP, government spending is one of the key, indicators. And so if government has a tendency of spending in election year, yes, indeed, the economy will grow. But that does not mean that the economy will grow to the doorstep of the ordinary Ghanaian or the business person. Because if government is spending, then obviously interest rates are still going to remain high. Of course, the private sector lending will go down, and we don't expect that growth will be felt by, the ordinary citizen and then, businesses. And so we don't think, the growth will transcend into economic development.
I see. Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah. Grateful you could speak to us here on the marketplace. Let's stay a while longer on the economy, because Fish Solutions is predicting that Ghana's economy has begun showing signs of recovery after 2 years of difficulty. Well, in its latest Sub-Saharan Africa macroeconomic update, the UK-based firm said the country's economy will expand by 3.5% this year, contrary to the World Bank's 2.9%. Here is Mike Runinga, Senior Country Risk Analyst at Fitch Solutions.
2 years, I think, for Ghana's economy, with growth in 2023 having come in at a pretty muted 2.9%, as you can see on the left-hand side chart here. That said, I think there are some signs that Ghana's economy has finally started a recovery, with growth in the last quarter of 2023 having rebounded, coming in at 3.8%. And the uptick in growth was primarily driven by an improvement in the agricultural sector, as well as stronger activity in the services industry. So turning to 2024, so looking ahead, we forecast that the economy will expand by 3.5%. So still below the country's pre-pandemic trajectory, but markedly better compared to last year. And the primary driver of economic growth this year will be consumer spending, which will be supported by moderating inflation, as you can see on the right-hand side chart.
And to some other stories, the Ghana Standards Authority and Food and Drugs Authority have harmonized their certification process to fast-track approvals for businesses. The move is part of measures to lessen the time and process for enterprises seeking approvals for products and services with the two institutions. Professor Alex Dodo is Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority and has been speaking on PM Express Business Edition.
It's when we manufacture, when our industry and our service sectors are able to produce more than we need, export, and get a needed foreign exchange. This is basic knowledge across the world. America, the Americas, and the UKs, and the EUs are all driven by business, trade in goods and all services. Now, this trade is perfect when it has a language which is or understandable to everybody. So we always say that the standards or the language of trade is standard. Why? If you want to buy a phone, you want to know whether it's iPhone 2 or iPhone 20, you want to know whether it's a Samsung. You mentioned it just in one line, but it's actually a description which is written. If you say iPhone 15, you know what it is. 3 phones, etc., etc. That is standard, and that is the language of trade. And that language cuts across geographies. It doesn't matter whether it's Chinese or whatever. That language is fixed. Where industry has that language and where the translation is not ambiguous, industry thrives. Our job is to be business friendly. In fact, the job of any national standards body should be judged by how well it has moved industry forward.
And are you doing that? And that's the critical question anybody wants to ask, that are you doing that?
The answer is yes to a point. I said yes to a point because there are two dimensions to standards. Standards development is one thing, standards enforcement is the other. And I'll use the cable sector. We've had standards, but their enforcement was variable. When the GSA started enforcing, especially to ensure that all cables, whether locally manufactured or imported, meet the same specifications, what it did was to move the production of the local sector up, and according to industry players, by more than 40% in terms of trade, and remove unwanted substandard products. And we're happy to say that by enforcing regularly, the proportion of substandard cables on the Ghanaian market keep falling. We have applied that to cement, and the big players will tell you that following our enforcement actions, their sales went up by hundreds of thousands of bags per day. So where standards are established, and more importantly, where they are enforced, business thrives, because then you are creating a level playing field for industry, but importantly also protecting consumers.
Now, former Chief Executive Officer of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, Hayford Achakofi, is asking for further streamline of Ghana's pension scheme to support its citizenry. According to him, the country's pension scheme lacks some adequacy and efficiency, hence the need for an urgent reassessment of the scheme. He spoke to Joy Business at the launch of his book titled Principles of Pension and Trusteeship in Ghana.
The book titled Principles of Pension and Trusteeship in Ghana explore the challenges and solution of pension scheme in the country. Mr. Atakrufi called for more education on pension schemes.
So the book is all about pension planning. A lot of people work throughout their lives and they do not really consciously plan towards their retirement. As we all know, it is inevitable that one day we're all going to retire. And therefore the book is a prompt to workers, to all stakeholders, that pension planning is very, very important. And it also talks about pensions generally, the perception of it, and the principles upon which pensions are based. They are based on the principle of trust, because you're going to leave your money with people for about 45 years. If you don't have trust in their ability and in their professionalism, you cannot do that. And therefore, the practitioners also need to make sure that the kind of trust that people have for them, they should also be transparent and follow the duty of care. And these are some of the things that the book talks about. The principles are right. Indeed, the three-tier pension system that we have in our country is one of the best, because it takes care of the basic social security, and it also talks about, takes care of occupational pension, plus a top-up. So indeed, the concept is big, is good, but it is the understanding of it and also sometimes the adequacy of it. These are things that we all have to have conversations about.
The book also touched on some reforms in Ghana's pension scheme.
You're still watching The Marketplace with me, Pius Kojo Baka. Time now for showbiz. And with the goal of generating $4 billion in revenue and welcoming a minimum of 2 million tourists by 2025, Ghana is committed to showcasing its abundant offerings and positioning itself as a must-visit destination for travelers worldwide. Ghana has seen significant inflows of tourists after the Year of Return celebration and hopes to capitalize on this to make tourism one of Ghana's high GDP contributors. Now, today on Showbiz, we analyze potential of the tourism industry and how feasible really it is for the year 2025 target. Joining me in studio for some discussion on this is my colleague Isaac Atasenyako for some great analysis. Thanks so much, Atase. First off, give me a breakdown. What has been the spending pattern of tourists over the last 5 years?
So, Pius, over the last 5 years, first off, let me start off this way. The boss of GTA announced sometime, a few weeks ago during the Stanbic Graphic
meeting,
exactly on tourism, that last year, that's 2023, tourism made $3 billion, and this is compared to the $2 billion that they accrued in 2022. That's quite a huge leap. However, this falls short of their target, which is $3.4 billion. Now, they have a goal to accrue about $4 billion by 2025, and so we'll assess how feasible this is. Right. But first of all, I just want us to have a look at the average tourist expenditure from 2018. So we look at how, it shot up a little bit in 2019, and then it dipped because of COVID. And then in 2019, it shot up to $1,289, that's averagely.
Right.
And then in 2022, it shot up to $2,743. Now, in 2023, the Ghana Tourism Authority says that it shot up to $2,980. So with all the tourists that came in, mind you, about 1.1 million tourists came into the country from, start of 2023 to end of 2023. And average expenditure by these 1.1 million tourists accrued to about $2,980. Now, this is clearly some increase if we follow the trajectory right here. I mean, apart from COVID, we were on the rise and we've been on the rise. And so we are believing and trusting that we may be able to, hit that target that, the Tourism Authority together with the ministry is projecting. Now, if we go forward to the next slide.
All right.
we can talk about their expenditure patterns, where the money goes. So we can look at accommodation. So 2022, 2021, how much of was spent on accommodation, so the percentages of the budget or total budget of tourists was spent on accommodation. Now you see accommodation is always on top from 2022. Food also one of the highest, shopping, recreation, just about 5%, local transport and other spending. Now entertainment and recreation, just about 5%. So we are wondering, where is the shortfall? So we'll talk about it when we come to the potential of the tourism sector. But in a nutshell, Pius, this is what has been going on. These are the figures as presented by the Ghana Tourism Authority.
Great. So how do we compare this to that of 2023?
So yes, so like I rightly mentioned, in 2023, that's the figure of 2022. I don't have all the figures for 2023, but like I rightly mentioned, in 2023, there was a little jump in all of the activities. Clearly, like I mentioned, the accrued, total accrued in 2022 was around 2 billion. It jumped to 3 billion, despite, they falling short of their target of $3.4 billion. However, it's projected this year that it's supposed to go up to somewhere around 4 billion. Let's see how that pans out. But in all of this lies the bit about the potential. If we look at how much is spent on entertainment and recreation,
very much interested in that.
We don't have the exact figures and the details as to what goes into entertainment and recreation, but you would expect that for tourists coming down, there should be some huge amount being spent on entertainment and recreation. Now, I'm believing that this category will also encompass all our tourism sites as well. So the problem I see from where I sit is that inability to create the all year round experience. So it shouldn't be only in December. We shouldn't go to Kwawu only when it's Easter. We should be able to visit these places all year round, so we keep the places running. I paid a visit to, L Menon just a few weeks ago, and their castles are not in the best of shape. You don't see much happening there, not many people there. That's because we've not done a lot to encourage, visits from time to time, even local tourism. You and I, for instance, how many times do we travel out of our homes and our comfort zones to visit some of these places? So I think our ability to create that all year round experience is what will build that kind of that bring in the kind of inflows that we expect.
Great, thank you so much, Atase Nyaku. We have run out of time. We'll definitely follow up in subsequent bulletins. That's it for the marketplace for today. I am Pius Kujubaka. For more stories, feel free to log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Grateful serving you. Do enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye.